She says it softly. "You're imagining things." Her tone is calm, almost loving, like she's soothing a child after a nightmare. But that's the brilliance of it. Real deception never sounds defensive. It sounds maternal. Every word is carefully designed to lower your guard, not challenge it. What you hear as comfort is in truth sedation. Because when a woman lies about betrayal, she doesn't fight to convince you. She nurtures you back into blindness. The most dangerous lies aren't shouted. They're whispered with care. Number 1, the denial reflex. It never starts with a story. It starts with silence. You sense a shift in rhythm. Her texts take longer. Her voice carries a trace of distance. Her laughter feels half-occupied. You ask if something's wrong, and she smiles, too quickly. No, everything's fine. That single phrase, spoken softly, is the first layer of the lie. Not because it's malicious, but because she needs it to be true. Denial for her isn't deception, it's preservation. To admit what's happening would shatter the image she depends on to see herself as good. The denial reflex is born from identity, not manipulation. Most women are conditioned to see themselves as loyal, nurturing, incapable of real betrayal. So when they cross a line, emotional or physical, the mind doesn't confess, it compensates. She convinces herself it's harmless, that it's just a friend, that she's allowed to have her own space. Each justification is a thread woven into a false calm. She isn't lying to you yet. She's lying through you, borrowing your belief in her to stabilize her dissonance. A man feels this shift before he can explain it. He notices the small inconsistencies, the pause before an answer, the overly specific explanation, the forced eye contact meant to prove transparency. His instinct stirs, but her softness disarms it. She doesn't argue, doesn't accuse, doesn't escalate. She simply insists there's nothing to worry about. That tone, measured, reasonable, isn't designed to deceive. It's designed to end the conversation before the truth has to surface. Psychologically, denial functions like an emotional firewall. It blocks guilt from reaching consciousness. Each "nothing's wrong" buys her another day of self-respect. She tells herself she's protecting your peace, that she's preventing unnecessary pain. But denial always expands to fit the size of what's being hidden. Soon, "nothing's wrong" becomes the shield for everything that is. This first lie is almost gentle in its execution because it doesn't feel like a lie. It feels like maintenance, like she's keeping the relationship steady while she figures things out. But in that maintenance, the first fracture forms. The man begins to sense what she can no longer suppress, and her calm begins to sound like distance. Denial may be meant to preserve the bond, but it only delays its collapse. Number 2, the guilt translation. When denial begins to crack, guilt seeps through, but guilt rarely confesses directly. It disguises itself as concern. She looks at him one evening and says, "You've been so distant lately." The irony is sharp. The space she created now becomes his fault. This is the guilt translation, the moment her subconscious shifts blame outward to balance the internal weight of what she's done. It's not conscious strategy, it's psychological self-preservation. To live with her actions, she must first rewrite their meaning. At first, it sounds like emotional awareness. She's initiating conversation, expressing sensitivity, showing interest. But beneath that tenderness lies inversion. When she frames his unease as his withdrawal, she reframes her betrayal as reaction, not origin. "I just feel like you're not present anymore" isn't an accusation, it's an alibi. The implication is subtle but lethal. If he's been distant, then her detachment becomes justified. She's not being unfaithful, she's simply responding. This pattern thrives on empathy. Most men, trained to fix rather than confront, will take the bait. He searches himself, wondering if he truly has been absent, overworked, distracted. He apologizes for not giving enough attention, not realizing he's participating in his own manipulation. Each apology he offers absorbs a piece of her guilt. She feels lighter, he feels responsible, and the balance shifts. The more he tries to close the gap, the more it widens, because her guilt no longer needs reconciliation, only validation. Behavioral psychology calls this emotional displacement. The person who feels guilty unconsciously transfers moral tension onto the other to restore internal order. It's not calculated deceit. it's instinctive equilibrium. When a woman says, "I just don't feel as close to you anymore," she's externalizing the split she's already created. The distance is real, but its source isn't what she claims. She's not describing emotional truth, she's narrating her own justification. Over time, this dynamic corrodes clarity. He begins to doubt his instincts, to interpret suspicion as insecurity, to confuse empathy with guilt. What was once intuition now feels like paranoia. She's no longer just covering up an affair, she's reconstructing emotional reality. And because her guilt feels sincere, he believes her pain before he questions her story. The genius of the guilt translation is its emotional symmetry. She doesn't need to hide behind lies if she can hide within sincerity. Every word she says is emotionally true, just contextually false. She does feel distant, she does feel hurt. But those feelings aren't caused by neglect, they're caused by her own dissonance, and when he absorbs that pain as his fault, her guilt finds relief, even as the deception deepens. Number 3. The distraction script. By the time the guilt translation has softened his instincts, she no longer needs denial, she needs diversion. This is where the distraction script begins. It's not a complex lie, it's a linguistic maneuver designed to exhaust inquiry. When he gently revisits his doubts, she exhales and says, "You're overthinking things." Simple, neutral, almost kind. But those 4 words contain one of the oldest emotional defenses in existence, pathologizing perception. The tactic is elegant because it doesn't deny, it discredits. She doesn't argue against his suspicion. She redefines his awareness as anxiety. That small shift transfers control from fact to feeling. Once he's made to feel irrational, the investigation ends, not through resolution, but through shame. She wins the argument by making him question whether there ever was one. Psychologically, this is called gaslighting light. Not the dramatic manipulation people imagine, but the everyday erosion of self-trust. It thrives on tone, not logic. A sigh, a small smile, a reassuring touch on the arm. Each gesture tells him, "You're being emotional, and I'm the calm one here." She establishes moral authority through composure, not truth. He senses the distance but begins to doubt his sanity for noticing it. The distraction script doesn't just silence suspicion, it reconditions response. The next time he feels uncertainty, he suppresses it. He's been trained that expressing doubt causes tension, and avoiding tension feels like love. This is how a man loses his instincts, not because they failed him, but because they were shamed into submission. And the cruel brilliance? The more rational she sounds, the more unstable he feels. It's emotional hypnosis disguised as maturity. "Why would I lie to you?" she asks softly. He can't answer without sounding paranoid. The question isn't meant to invite dialogue, it's meant to close it. Every "you're overthinking" is a sedative. It calms his body while numbing his clarity. The lie hides not in contradiction but in tone, the tranquil cadence of someone who has already rehearsed her innocence. By the time he stops asking, she doesn't need to lie anymore. The truth can sit quietly in the open, disguised as his self-doubt. Number 4. The logistics alibi. When emotion alone can no longer contain suspicion, the next stage begins, the logistics alibi. "I was with the girls." It's casual, plausible, perfectly ordinary. No tension, no defensiveness, just the easy confidence of someone who knows the story fits the calendar. But what makes this line effective isn't the lie itself. It's the use of social trust as camouflage. Human beings believe groups more than individuals. When she invokes friends, schedules, or shared events, she's outsourcing credibility. The lie gains legitimacy not through detail, but through association. He doesn't just trust her, he trusts the context around her. The safest deception is one that doesn't have to stand alone. Here's the deeper mechanism. This lie isn't about convincing him she's innocent. It's about convincing herself that she's not actively deceiving. "I was with the girls" might be technically true. Maybe she was with them for an hour before or after seeing someone else. Partial truth becomes moral cover. In her mind, she's not lying. She's editing. What most men miss is the choreography. The small pauses between messages, the vague timestamps, the sudden habit of sharing more details than usual. Over-explaining isn't transparency, it's rehearsal. The guilt is already present, but it's managed through precision. She keeps the details neat enough to be untraceable, but human enough to feel authentic. The logistics alibi represents the final transition from emotional concealment to tactical deceit. It's the point where empathy ends and performance begins. She's no longer protecting your peace, she's protecting her double life. But the disguise still carries traces of care. She checks in more often, sends warm texts, ensures the illusion of normalcy. Not out of love, but because consistent behaviour is her insurance policy. This is the stage where most men start doubting themselves for being suspicious. The evidence feels too subtle, too petty to confront. But that's the trap. Her story doesn't need to be airtight, just comfortable enough to believe. When he accepts convenience as proof, she no longer needs truth as protection. Every lie in this phase is transactional. It buys time, normalcy, and emotional cover. And each time he believes it, he teaches her something. That the bond can survive deception, as long as the story sounds kind. Number 5. The guilt preemption. Guilt never disappears. It evolves. When a woman can no longer suppress it, she redirects it. This is the birth of the guilt preemption, the paradoxical moment when the cheater becomes the moral authority. It often arrives wrapped in sincerity. "I don't know what I'd do if you ever cheated on me." The tone is tender, even fearful. But beneath it lies one of the most sophisticated psychological maneuvers in relationships, confessing morality to conceal immorality. This line isn't about you, it's about her need to reassert virtue. By speaking moral outrage, she separates her image from her actions. She creates emotional distance between the woman who's speaking and the woman who's betraying. That separation soothes her cognitive dissonance. It allows her to lie without feeling like a liar. To her nervous system, she's not deceiving. She's defending an identity. This stage is so effective because it recruits empathy as a shield. A man hears this and feels comforted. He thinks, she'd never cheat. She's afraid of betrayal herself. What he doesn't realize is that her fear isn't of betrayal, it's of discovery. When she projects that moral standard onto him, she's not creating intimacy, she's building insulation. Now, if he suspects her later, she can weaponize that moment of moral clarity. "How could you accuse me after what I said?" Her words become an alibi retroactively. Psychologically, guilt preemption functions like emotional laundering. The act of moral confession cleanses the emotional residue of wrongdoing. She feels absolved without exposure. It's the same mechanism seen in religious confession. The relief comes not from change, but from articulation. And once that relief is felt, the behavior can continue, free from shame. What's most dangerous about this phase is how it deepens the emotional bond right before betrayal matures. She becomes softer, more affectionate, even vulnerable. He interprets it as reconnection, unaware that vulnerability can also be camouflage. Her tenderness is strategic. It keeps him calm, invested, blind. In her mind, she's balancing scales. The tenderness she gives at home offsets the guilt she carries elsewhere. The man who takes this empathy at face value begins to trust her more than his instincts. But every "I'd never cheat" isn't a promise. It's a prayer to herself, a desperate attempt to keep her dual realities from collapsing, and by the time he realizes that, she's already rewritten history in her favor. Number 6. The tender overcompensation. After guilt preemption comes its natural counterpart, overcorrection. The tender overcompensation is perhaps the most deceptive phase, not because it hides deceit, but because it feels like love. One morning she's uncharacteristically affectionate. She compliments him, cooks his favourite meal, laughs easily. The warmth is real, but its origin is contamination, not connection. When guilt reaches a threshold, the psyche seeks balance through gestures of care. Every kiss, every gentle touch, every thoughtful message is her way of offsetting moral tension. It's not reconciliation, it's relief. She's not trying to heal the relationship, she's trying to quiet her conscience. And because affection activates the same neurochemical reward system as confession, she feels redeemed without ever telling the truth. The man, however, feels hope. He senses the warmth returning and assumes the storm has passed. He mistakes contrition for commitment, not realizing that guilt-driven affection has an expiration date. Once her conscience resets, the tenderness fades, leaving confusion in its place. He doesn't know that each burst of intimacy was simply her internal reset button. Behaviourally, this overcompensation follows a predictable pattern. The more intense the deceit, the more vivid the affection. Small lies produce mild reassurance. Deep betrayals produce grand gestures. Trips, gifts, declarations of love. They're not celebrations, they're cover fire. She's not falling back in love. She's rebuilding a believable mask. Neuroscience calls this moral licensing. When people do something good, they feel freer to act badly later. Her affection then becomes justification. By being loving, she convinces herself she's not the kind of person who cheats. She's just confused, unfulfilled, or emotionally lost. The tenderness isn't a bridge back to the relationship. It's a way to make betrayal psychologically sustainable. To the man, these gestures feel sacred, like proof that love can survive anything. But what he's experiencing is not revival, it's anesthesia, the calm before another storm. Each affectionate act delays the inevitable confrontation, teaching her that love can be mimicked well enough to replace truth. And that's the hardest lesson for any man to accept. When love is used to erase guilt, it stops being love. It becomes management, emotional damage control wrapped in sweetness. What she's soothing isn't you, it's herself. Number 7. The victim mask. When concealment starts to crumble, the most reliable defense left is moral reversal. She becomes the one who's been wounded. It begins subtly. I just feel like you don't trust me anymore. The tone is soft, tired, slightly hurt. This is the victim mask, turning exposure into empathy, turning suspicion into cruelty. She's not denying guilt anymore, she's reframing it as emotional injury. The accusation dissolves, not through argument, but through pity. This maneuver works because it flips polarity. Now he becomes the aggressor, and she becomes the misunderstood partner struggling under unfair scrutiny. She reclaims innocence by acting fragile. That fragility disarms masculine confrontation faster than any logic could. The man, built to protect rather than interrogate, retreats instantly. He starts apologizing again, this time for noticing. Every sentence she speaks in this mode has dual intent, to re-establish power and to anesthetize guilt. You used to trust me. What happened? Sounds like longing, but it's actually boundary control. It forces him to revalidate her moral standing. Once he does, she's safe again, not from his anger, but from her own conscience. Because if he's being unfair, then she's still good. Psychologically, this is shame transference. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. When guilt starts to mutate into shame, she panics, and the only way to relieve it is to export it. So she makes him feel ashamed for suspecting her, for breaking her trust. The emotional roles reverse. The betrayer becomes the betrayed, and the betrayed becomes the villain. It's not cruelty, it's self-preservation. Her nervous system can't handle the weight of being both loved and guilty. So it constructs a story where she's the one wronged. You've changed, she might whisper, eyes heavy with sincerity. It's not performance, it's self-hypnosis. She has to believe it to keep functioning, but once she does, the deception is complete, not just against him, but against herself. At this stage, confrontation becomes impossible. Any attempt to discuss truth now feels like emotional violence. She's sealed inside her narrative, guarded by empathy. And the man, desperate to keep peace, learns the cruel paradox. The more gently he handles her, the deeper her story roots itself. He's no longer living with a liar. He's living with a woman convinced she's innocent. Number 8. The justification loop. Eventually, the story must evolve. Guilt, denial, and performance can only hold for so long before fatigue sets in. She's tired of hiding, tired of maintaining the mask, tired of the inner division. But instead of confession, she reaches for transformation. We've both changed, she says softly. I just don't feel the same anymore. This is the justification loop, the phase where betrayal is reframed as personal growth. It sounds wise, mature, even spiritual. She's not running away, she's finding herself. The relationship isn't collapsing, it's evolving. The moral inversion is complete. What began as deceit now re-emerges as enlightenment. The language of therapy replaces the language of truth. She isn't cheating, she's healing. She isn't abandoning, she's honoring her needs. The power of this stage lies in tone. There's no anger, no blame, no defensiveness. She speaks with calm authority, as though she's already forgiven both of them. But this composure isn't clarity, it's detachment. She's already rewritten the past in a way that allows her to leave without being wrong. And because her words sound rational, the man has no defense. Every attempt to challenge her feels like immaturity. Every question he asks now makes him look emotional, while she floats above the mess she created. This is the final psychological maneuver, transforming betrayal into philosophy. She reframes selfishness as self-knowledge. "I just can't pretend anymore" becomes the moral high ground. It allows her to exit without apology and to carry her narrative with pride. That narrative will become her truth because repetition hardens into conviction. For men, this stage is the hardest to process because there's nothing to argue with. She's no longer lying, she's transcended the need to. In her mind, she's rewritten morality to match her actions, and in that rewriting she becomes untouchable. The same woman who once whispered, "I could never hurt you," now tells herself, "He'll understand someday." What she doesn't realize is that this kind of closure isn't healing, it's erasure. She isn't resolving guilt, she's dissolving accountability. But because she feels calm, she believes she's grown, and the man, left with no villain to blame, has only silence to confront. That's how betrayal ends in modern love, not with a fight, but with a tone that sounds like peace. Number 9, the emotional displacement. Every affair, before it's physical, begins as an emotional migration. The line she repeats now, "I just need some space," isn't a request for clarity, it's a coded announcement. Space means separation without confrontation, distance without confession. It allows her to withdraw while maintaining moral dignity. The phrase sounds balanced, self-aware, even healthy. But what she's really saying is, "I need room to live my double life without guilt." Emotional displacement is the process of redirecting intimacy while keeping the facade of stability. She begins to detach from shared rituals, the goodnight messages, the morning coffee, the small routines that once anchored your bond. In their place, new habits appear. A sudden interest in alone time, self-care, or new priorities. Each is a linguistic veil. What she calls space is simply emotional realignment, pulling warmth away from you to fuel something elsewhere. This stage is less about lying and more about gradual substitution. She starts confiding in someone else, just harmless conversations at first, the kind that seem innocent when explained. But intimacy always moves toward exclusivity. The more she shares her inner world with another, the more her presence with you becomes performance. You start feeling it in the way she listens, her mind elsewhere, her attention fragmented. It's not confrontation you're avoiding anymore, it's absence you're mistaking for peace. The displacement feels justified to her. After all, she told you she needed space. In her mind, she's been transparent. She uses honesty as insulation, not integrity. The language protects her from guilt by framing betrayal as self-preservation. She's not being deceitful, she's being honest about her needs. That linguistic sleight of hand transforms infidelity into self-expression. When a woman reaches this stage, the relationship has already been hollowed out. The lie isn't what she says, it's what she withholds. Her truth becomes carefully rationed, her emotions measured. The man, still interpreting silence as safety, keeps loving a version of her that no longer exists. What he's holding onto isn't her, it's her echo. Number 10. The confession of omission. Eventually every deception meets fatigue. Keeping the story consistent becomes harder than telling the truth. That's when she begins to confess, but not completely. "I didn't lie," she says, "I just didn't tell you everything." The confession of omission is the final act in the architecture of deceit. It isn't meant to expose, it's meant to reset. By offering fragments of truth, she gains moral relief without surrendering power. This phase feels like honesty because it carries vulnerability. She cries, admits mistakes, speaks of confusion and regret. But listen closely. The details remain vague. What she gives you is emotion, not information. She's not confessing to liberate you. She's confessing to liberate herself. Partial truth functions as a sedative. It dulls the sharpness of guilt while maintaining narrative control. The real genius of omission lies in semantics. She weaponizes the difference between lying about something and lying by omission. "You never asked" becomes her moral loophole, as though deceit requires interrogation to exist. Her logic reframes silence as innocence, turning absence of truth into absence of blame. By the end, she can claim honesty while standing on the ashes of trust. And for the man, the emotional damage runs deeper than betrayal itself. It's not what she hid. It's that she convinced him his instincts were cruel for noticing. Even her truth becomes a trap because it arrives too late to repair what's already eroded. He learns that real deception isn't the act, it's the story built around it, one detail withheld at a time. Her tears, her explanations, her apologies, they close the story without closure. She feels purified, he feels emptied. That's the cruel symmetry of the confession of omission. She regains peace by narrating what destroyed his. Most men think lies come wrapped in malice, raised voices, contradictions, panic. But women's lies are made of care, precision, tone. They don't sound like betrayal, they sound like love being carefully managed. The deeper the deceit, the softer the delivery. Every reassurance is a thread in the fabric of concealment, woven so gently you mistake comfort for truth. The real lesson isn't how to catch her, it's how to stop needing reassurance to believe reality. When a woman lies, she's not rewriting facts, she's rewriting your faith in yourself. And when you stop trusting your instincts, she doesn't have to hide anything. The end of every deception isn't revelation, it's recovery. You don't reclaim trust by demanding truth. You reclaim it by remembering that honesty never needs management. Truth doesn't whisper, it simply endures.